Dubstep is just fucking dinosaur shit.
Hey there YouTube, it's been a while. I've been meaning to upload this video. This is the Dubstep Song from Scratch Part 4. In this one I'm going to talk about EQ, about mixing, because I'm not sure where to go with the song right now. So I'm just going to talk about EQ, mixing, all that type of thing. So you guys can get some tips on how to make your tracks sound a little bit more professional, have a little bit better finish to them. So I'm just going to be talking about how stuff works together, general practice for EQ, and just talk about a couple of the changes that I made. And if you have suggestions for where you think this song should go, let me know and I'll take it in a different direction. Right now it's turning out to be pretty ambient and kind of relaxed, so okay. Let's talk about some EQ. The first thing I'll look at is the kick. And for the most part, you want the kick, you want to boost at the kick to be around 100 Hertz. So when you open up EQ, what I do is I cut below like 28 or 30, so just to get that very low mud out. And you might have to duplicate that cut on a second EQ or on a high pass filter, sorry, at around 30 Hertz. And then let's listen to the kick by itself actually. Let's turn on the analyzer, post EQ, and high resolution. So you want a nice little boost to be around 100, small Q, or I guess larger Q, and then about like 2 or 3 dB. And then you want maybe a little dip around 200 because that's when the snare kind of punches through. So you want a little bit of a dip there. 200 or 250 is a good place to give it a little cut. And then a little bit of brightness always helps. You don't want the kick to be too bright, but you want it to punch through the mix, so you want a little bit of that high end. What some people do is they take 2 kicks and they cut out the highs in one, cut out the low in the other, and layer them so that they have like a really clicky sounding one, which is all the high frequencies, and then a bassy kick. So they have the combination of the two. Okay, so a good practice, at least for me, is a lot of the mud is around 500 to 700 Hertz. So what I do is I take one of the EQ bands and then make it a smaller EQ like that, or a smaller Q, or larger, but the frequency range is smaller. And then what you do is to get out all of the mud, you go from 200 down and just look for that frequency by pushing it up. So the frequency that comes out the loudest when you move this around is the one that you want to get rid of. Alright, so that one seems like it's resonating the most, so we put this back. I just did that so while I'm listening for that frequency I don't have to deal with all the other stuff. So now you have this EQ band all the way up. You bring it back down and you cut a few dB out of it now that you located that frequency. And that has to do with surgical EQ, which I have a tutorial on. If you want to check that out, I did a surgical EQ example with vocals. Okay, so we have one EQ band left, and depending on the kick, I give it a little boost, around 2 to 3.5K. Okay, so let me make this loop shorter. Here's it without the EQ. Here's it with. So it makes it a little bit brighter, makes it a little bit tighter, gives it a little boost at 100, so that we get a little bit more punch. Okay, so let's go to the snare. So I have the snare sent to a bus with little space design. And we can get rid of this. And good practice is cut from about 120 down, because the meat of the snare is 200 up. I'll find that frequency again, see if there's... Actually, I could use this EQ band. Find that harmonic that's the loudest. So here's it without. So it's a little bit brighter. Has some of that lower stuff taken out. And when you're doing electro with like 4 on the floor type deal, and you have like kick, snare, but the kick is over the snare, you want to have a little bit more of a low cut. So you want to bring that low cut a little bit higher when it's the kick and the snare together. But for now, this should be fine around 100 or 120. Alright, so cymbals. Cymbals you want to cut from 1K down. So bring that to 1K, and depending on the song, you could bring that a little bit higher or lower. So before, it sounded like this. Hear all those low frequencies that you don't really need? You can take those all out. That's what the kick and snare sounds like this. And then you can usually take the same EQ that you put on the snare, and if you have a reverse snare, you can put that on there with the copy and paste function in the EQ. And this thing is just like a little layer that I put over the snare. And that can be cut at around 500. Could probably give it some distortion too, by going to distortion, overdrive, bringing the tone up. That's sounding pretty good. So synths, I usually cut around like 300 down, because the bass, the lowest frequencies of the bass are like 100 and under, but you don't want the synths to interfere with the snare too much. So I cut like around 300 down. That's sounding pretty good. And then this bass is essentially just a sine wave with a little bit of modulation on it. Sine wave and square wave with little modulation. So there isn't much high frequencies, it's basically all bass. And I did cut some high. So you wanted to do a cut at 100 where you had the kick. The Q a little bit bigger. Usually, I mean, I did kind of a larger boost for this because the bass wasn't really coming out as loud as I wanted. But you want a little bit of a boost, and then a cut at 30. Cut at 500 if you want, and then maybe a little bit of a boost. Okay, so without the EQ it sounds like this. You could probably get away, since this is dubstep and it's not really driven by the kick, it's driven more by the bass. You can get away with cutting a little bit more of the low end out of the kick. So you can probably go to like 37, 40 maybe. Alright, so let's take all of the EQ on the tracks that I just did and turn them all off. And then I'll do the same, play the same mix with all of the EQ on, and we'll see how it sounds. Alright, so let's see with the EQ on. So the mix sounds a lot tighter, sounds a lot cleaner, there's less mud in there, and overall everything just sort of works together a little bit better. I guess something else that I could talk about is something with the cymbals. I didn't learn only until recently that it's a good practice to cut around 1.1 or 1K down. And that was like very, very helpful for me because a lot of like the mud from my track was coming from my cymbals. Side chaining the sine wave to the kick is always a good practice because you don't want the bass of the kick to interfere with the bass of the subs. Like you can hear, where's that note? Right here. Like when the kick and the synth happen at the same time here, there's a little bit of like distortion because they're both So first thing we can do is we can compress it. And then set the side chain to the kick. I think that sounds pretty good. And then you want to limit the bass because it's clipping pretty aggressively. Basically with a limiter, you take the input scale down until and then you turn the gain up to make it. You don't want to push it too hard because then it can get distorted in the higher regions, but and then if the other stuff is louder, if you're still in the mixing stage, you can turn everything else around it down. So take all of this minus the sine wave and bring it down, let's say 1 dB. Alright, so I hope this tutorial helped. Helped you guys with some skills in mixing that some of which I learned pretty recently actually, so I hope this has been helpful and I hope you enjoyed it. I will be back with another tutorial next week. And I'll try to keep up to the 1 week schedule now that I'm back into the swing of things. So if you have any suggestions, questions, anything really, leave it in a comment, or you can message me personally and I will answer. So if you haven't gotten the drum samples already, I'll put a link in the description and in an annotation to the media file where you can grab the drum samples that I use in this song. I'm probably going to end up changing the song a little bit, maybe changing the focus. So we'll see where it goes, but with your guidance, we can probably take it in a cool direction. So let me know where you think it should go. Yeah, so I'll take some footage. I'm going to see Excision tomorrow at the Worcester Palladium, so I'll take some footage from that, and I'll possibly upload it to my channel, or I'll put it on my Facebook or whatever. And yeah, so all the links you guys need will be in the description. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.
It's just fucking dinosaur shit.